The late afternoon sun filtered through the glass windows of Myers Pharmacy in downtown Portland, Oregon, casting long shadows across the aisles of medicine bottles and health products. Outside, the typical November drizzle painted the streets with a glossy sheen, and the distant sound of traffic mixed with the gentle patter of rain on the storefront awning. Sarah Mitchell stood in line, her work badge still hanging around her neck from her shift at the Children's Hospital. At 28 years old, she had learned to find small moments of peace in her hectic routine as a pediatric nurse. Today had been particularly exhausting. Back-to-back shifts, crying children, worried parents, and the constant emotional weight of caring for the vulnerable. If you're enjoying this story so far, please subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything, and we have many more inspiring stories coming your way. Ahead of her in line stood an elderly woman, her silver hair tied back in a neat bun, wearing a worn but clean purple cardigan. She couldn't have been younger than 75. And her hands trembled slightly as she placed 3 prescription bottles on the counter. The pharmacist, a middle-aged man with glasses perched on his nose, scanned each medication and announced the total. "That'll be $287.43, ma'am," he said matter-of-factly. Sarah watched as the elderly woman's face fell. She opened her small leather purse with shaking hands and began counting crumpled bills and loose change. The line behind them grew longer, and Sarah could feel the impatience building in the air. The woman counted once, twice, 3 times, her fingers moving slower each time, her expression growing more desperate. I have 143, the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper, thick with embarrassment. "I thought I had enough. Could I maybe just get 2 of them? The heart medication and the—" "Ma'am, these are all prescribed together," the pharmacist interrupted, not unkindly, but with the tone of someone who'd had this conversation too many times. "Your doctor indicated they all need to be taken as a course. Without the blood thinner, the heart medication won't be as effective, and the pain medication is listed as essential for your recovery." The woman's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "My Social Security doesn't come until next week, and I already spent this month's budget on my husband's funeral expenses." Her voice cracked. "He passed 3 weeks ago." Sarah felt something shift in her chest, that familiar ache that came from witnessing human suffering. She'd seen it in the hospital countless times, but it never got easier. Without overthinking it, she stepped forward and placed her hand gently on the counter. "Excuse me," Sarah said softly to the pharmacist. "I'd like to pay for her medications." The elderly woman turned sharply, her watery blue eyes wide with shock. "Oh no, dear, I couldn't possibly—" "Please," Sarah interrupted gently, already pulling out her credit card. "I want to do this. We all need help sometimes. If this moment touched your heart, hit that like button. It helps us share more stories like this one." The pharmacist looked between them, then nodded and processed Sarah's card. The transaction was quick, a simple swipe, a brief wait, a receipt printed. But for the elderly woman, it seemed to be something much more profound. Tears now flowed freely down her weathered cheeks. "I don't know what to say," the woman stammered, clutching Sarah's hand with surprising strength. "You don't even know me. Why would you—" "Because someone once helped me when I needed it most," Sarah said, the memory of her own mother's struggle with cancer treatment costs flashing through her mind. "And because it's the right thing to do." The woman wiped her eyes with a tissue from her purse. "What's your name, Angel?" "Sarah. Sarah Mitchell. And you are?" "Margaret Davis. Mrs. Margaret Davis." She squeezed Sarah's hand again. "I won't forget this kindness. I promise you, I won't forget." Sarah smiled warmly. "You don't owe me anything, Mrs. Davis. Just take care of yourself, okay?" They exchanged a brief but meaningful hug before Margaret gathered her medications and shuffled toward the exit. Sarah watched her go, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction despite the small dent in her already tight budget. She'd figure it out. She always did. As Sarah collected her own prescription, a simple refill of her allergy medication, she noticed the pharmacist looking at her with newfound respect. "That was really kind of you," he said. "Not many people would do that." Sarah shrugged. "We're all just trying to get through life. Might as well help each other along the way." She left the pharmacy and walked to her car, the rain now falling more steadily. The drive back to her small apartment in the Hawthorne district took 20 minutes through rush-hour traffic. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, creating a beautiful blur of colors that somehow matched her contemplative mood. Her apartment was modest, a one-bedroom on the second floor of an older building, with creaky wooden floors and a radiator that clanked at odd hours. But it was hers, and she'd made it cozy with second-hand furniture, plants on every available surface, and photographs of family and friends covering the walls. Don't forget to comment below and tell us what city you're watching from. We love hearing from our viewers around the world. That evening, Sarah made herself a simple dinner of pasta and vegetables, watched half of a documentary about ocean conservation, and fell asleep on her couch with her cat, Milo, purring on her chest. The encounter at the pharmacy drifted to the back of her mind, just another small moment in the endless stream of daily life. The next few days passed in their usual rhythm. Sarah worked 3 12-hour shifts at the hospital, dealt with a leaking faucet in her bathroom, video-called her sister in Seattle, and managed to squeeze in a yoga class at the community center. By Thursday evening, she'd almost completely forgotten about Margaret Davis and the pharmacy encounter. It was Friday afternoon, her first day off in nearly a week, when everything changed. Sarah had been organizing her closet, a task she'd been postponing for months, when a firm knock echoed through her apartment. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her friends knew she was usually too exhausted after work to socialize, and deliveries were always left in the building's lobby. Puzzled, she walked to the door and looked through the peephole. A young man stood in the hallway, probably in his early 30s, wearing a navy blue jacket and jeans. His dark hair was slightly damp from the rain outside, and he held a large envelope in his hands. His expression was serious, almost stern. Sarah's heart rate picked up slightly. She lived alone, and unexpected visitors always made her cautious. "Can I help you?" she called through the door. "Are you Sarah Mitchell?" the man asked, his voice deep but not threatening. "Who's asking?" "My name is David Davis. I'm Margaret Davis's grandson. She told me what you did at the pharmacy last week." Sarah's memory clicked into place. The elderly woman, the medications, the brief moment of kindness. She unlocked the door but kept the chain latch engaged, opening it just enough to see him properly. David looked tired, she noticed now. There were dark circles under his brown eyes, and his jaw was set with tension. But there was something else there too, something that looked like barely contained emotion. Before we continue, if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your sign. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss our heartfelt stories. "Is Mrs. Davis all right?" Sarah asked immediately, concern flooding through her. Did something happen to her? David's expression softened slightly. "Can I come in? I need to talk to you. It's important." Sarah hesitated for just a moment, then her nurse's instinct, her tendency to trust and help, won out. She closed the door, unlatched the chain, and opened it fully. "Please come in," she said, stepping aside. David entered, looking around the small apartment with an expression she couldn't quite read. He seemed nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot, gripping the envelope tightly. "Would you like some water? Coffee?" Sarah offered, trying to put him at ease despite her own growing anxiety. "No, thank you. I need to give you this." He held out the envelope, his hand trembling slightly. "And I need to tell you something." Sarah took the envelope, confused. It was thick, heavy, and sealed with what looked like official legal tape. "What is this?" David took a deep breath, and when he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. My grandmother, Margaret Davis, passed away 2 days ago. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. What? No. But I just saw her. She seemed okay. Her heart, David interrupted softly. The doctor said it was just her time. She'd been sick for a while and losing my grandfather. It took everything out of her. He paused, wiping at his eyes. But those last few days, after she met you, she was different, happier. She kept talking about the angel at the pharmacy who restored her faith in humanity. Sarah felt tears prick her own eyes. I'm so sorry. I had no idea She made me promise something, David continued, his voice growing stronger. She made me promise to find you and give you this. She spent the last 3 days of her life making sure everything was in order. With shaking hands, Sarah opened the envelope. Inside were legal documents, multiple pages of official-looking paperwork. As she began to read, her vision blurred with tears and shock. The words swam before her eyes. Last will and testament, hereby bequeath. Sarah Mitchell. Full ownership. What is this? Sarah whispered, unable to comprehend what she was reading. David's expression was complex, grief, gratitude, and something that looked like awe mixed together. My grandmother owned her home in the Pearl District. It's fully paid off, worth about $650, his own dollars. She had no other living relatives except me, and I have my own place, my own life established. She wanted you to have it. Please hit that like button if this story is giving you chills. Sarah's legs felt weak. She sat down heavily on her couch, still clutching the papers. That's impossible. I can't accept this. I barely knew her. I just paid for her medicine. It was everything to her, David said firmly, sitting in the chair across from her. You have to understand, after my grandfather died, she was ready to give up. She told me she didn't see the point in going on. Then you appeared, this complete stranger, and showed her that there was still kindness in the world, that there were still people who cared. But a house? Sarah's voice rose in disbelief. This is too much. Way too much. There must be other family or... There isn't, David interrupted. And before you ask, yes, I was part of this decision. My grandmother called me the day after she met you. She told me what she wanted to do, and I supported her completely. She had her lawyer draw up the papers the next day. She was very clear about what she wanted. Sarah couldn't stop the tears now. They flowed freely down her face as the enormity of the situation washed over her. I don't know what to say. I never expected. She left you a letter too, David said, pulling a smaller envelope from his jacket pocket. She wanted you to read it. I haven't read it. It's private, just for you. With trembling fingers, Sarah opened the second envelope and unfolded the handwritten letter inside. The handwriting was shaky, but legible, written in blue ink on cream-colored stationery. My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, I've gone to be with my Harold. Please don't be sad for me. I've lived a long, full life, and I'm ready. I need you to know that what you did for me that day at the pharmacy was more than just paying for medicine. You gave me hope when I had none left. You reminded me that good people still exist in this difficult world. I'm leaving you my home because I want your kindness to be rewarded. I want you to have a foundation to build your life on, the way you helped give me peace in my final days. Don't feel guilty. Feel empowered. Use this gift to help others the way you helped me. Thank you, my angel. You made an old woman's last days beautiful. With all my love and gratitude, Margaret Davis. By the time Sarah finished reading, she was sobbing openly. David stood up and awkwardly offered her a tissue box from the side table, his own eyes red and watery. She really meant it, Sarah whispered. She really wanted this. She did, David confirmed. And so do I. You gave my grandmother something precious, hope, dignity, kindness. Please accept this gift with the spirit it's intended." Sarah looked up at him, seeing him clearly for the first time, not as a stranger, but as the grandson of a woman whose brief presence in her life had created a ripple effect she never could have imagined. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "Either of you." David smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his serious face. "Just live well, help people when you can." That's what she would have wanted. Or what do you think Sarah should do? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love reading your opinions. As David prepared to leave, he handed her a business card with his contact information and the lawyer's details. "The attorney will be in touch next week to finalize everything. It'll take some time to process, but the house is yours." She made sure everything was ironclad legally. Pudi. After he left, Sarah sat in her apartment for a long time, the letter clutched to her chest, Milo purring in her lap. The rain continued to fall outside, the city continued to move and breathe, but inside her small apartment, everything had shifted. One small act of kindness, one moment of compassion in a pharmacy line, had changed the entire trajectory of her life. And this was only the beginning of the story. Chapter 2. The Weight of a Gift. The following Monday morning, Sarah sat in the offices of Bennett and Associates, a law firm in downtown Portland with a view of the Willamette River. The office was all polished wood and leather furniture, the kind of place that made her acutely aware of her worn nurse's scrubs and comfortable shoes. She'd come straight from a night shift, too anxious to wait until after she'd rested. Across the desk sat Mr. Harold Bennett, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been Margaret Davis's attorney for over 20 years, and he'd handled her estate planning with the care of someone who genuinely cared about his client. "Ms. Mitchell," he began, sliding several documents across the desk. "I want to assure you that everything in Mrs. Davis's will is legally sound. She was of completely sound mind when she made these arrangements, and I have medical documentation to support that, should anyone ever question it." Sarah nodded, still feeling like she was moving through a dream. "I still can't believe this is real." Don't forget to subscribe if you're invested in Sarah's journey. We're just getting started." Mr. Bennett smiled gently. "Mrs. Davis was quite insistent. She told me that in her entire life she'd never experienced such spontaneous, genuine kindness from a stranger. She said it made her believe in humanity again." He paused, looking directly at Sarah. "In my 40 years of practicing law, I've seen many unusual bequests, but this one was made with more love and conviction than almost anything I've witnessed." "Can you tell me more about her?" Sarah asked, leaning forward. "I only met her for a few minutes." The attorney's expression softened with memory. "Margaret was a remarkable woman. She was a school teacher for 37 years and taught 4th grade in the Portland public school system. Thousands of children passed through her classroom. She and her husband Harold, he was a carpenter. They never had much money, but they saved carefully, invested wisely, and bought that house in the Pearl District back in 1987, long before the neighborhood became fashionable." He pulled out a folder with photographs. "She wanted you to see these." Sarah looked through the images, pictures of a younger Margaret with bright eyes and a wide smile, standing in front of a beautiful craftsman-style house with blue siding and white trim. There were photos of her with Harold, a tall man with a kind face and strong hands, photos of them in their garden at Christmas, celebrating anniversaries. The house has 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a full basement and a small backyard, Mr. Bennett continued. "It's been well maintained. Margaret made sure of that even after Harold passed. She moved in with her grandson David about 2 months ago because she couldn't manage the stairs anymore, but she kept the house, always hoping to pass it on to someone who would appreciate it." "Why me?" Sarah asked, the question that had been haunting her since David's visit. She didn't know me. She had David. She must have had friends. She had her reasons, the attorney said carefully, and she expressed them quite clearly to me. She said that David has his own successful career. He's a civil engineer with his own home. Her friends are all elderly or deceased. She wanted her legacy to go to someone whose life could be genuinely transformed by it, someone who had proven they had the heart she valued most. He slid a key across the desk. She wanted you to visit the house before making any final decisions. The property is yours, but she hoped you'd want to keep it, make it your home. Of course, you're free to sell it if you choose, but... He pulled out another envelope. She left you one more letter to be given when you received the keys. Hit that like button if you're feeling emotional right now. Sarah took the envelope with shaking hands and opened it carefully. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this second letter, you're now holding the keys to 1247 Northrop Street. This house holds 50 years of memories for me. Every floorboard, every window, every corner of the garden. I'm not giving you a house. I'm giving you a home, a place where you can build your own memories, where you can feel safe and loved, where you can continue to be the beautiful soul you are. I know it might feel overwhelming. It did for me too when Harold and I first bought it. We were terrified of the mortgage, of the responsibility, but it became our sanctuary, our foundation for everything good in our lives. Please go visit it. Walk through the rooms, sit in the garden, feel whether it speaks to you, and if it does, make it yours. Fill it with life and love. You gave me peace in my final days. Let this house give you security and joy for many years to come. With endless love, Margaret Sarah clutched the letter to her chest, tears rolling down her cheeks for what felt like the 100th time since this all began. Mr. Bennet discreetly pushed a box of tissues toward her. Take your time, he said gently. There's no rush with any of this. The property taxes are paid through the end of the year, and there's even a small fund she set aside to cover utilities for the first 6 months, to help with your transition. Sarah looked up at him, overwhelmed. She thought of everything. That was Margaret, he said with a sad smile. She was a teacher after all. She knew how to plan, how to care for people, how to set them up for success. Over the next hour, Mr. Bennet walked Sarah through all the paperwork, explaining the transfer process, the property details, the various documents she'd need to sign. Her head spun with information about deeds and titles and property assessments. Finally, as she prepared to leave, Mr. Bennet stood and shook her hand. Mrs. Davis would have been so happy to know the house is going to someone like you. Please don't feel guilty about this gift. Honor it by living well and continuing to be kind to others. Sarah left the office in a daze, the key to 1247 Northrop Street burning like a hot coal in her pocket. She couldn't go to the house immediately. Work demanded her attention. 3 more 12-hour shifts at the hospital, back to back, but the key stayed with her constantly, in her pocket during her shifts, under her pillow when she slept. She found herself touching it compulsively, making sure it was real, that this wasn't all some elaborate dream. Comment below. Would you keep the house or sell it? We want to know what you think. During a break on Wednesday, Sarah's best friend and fellow nurse Jessica cornered her in the staff lounge. "Okay, spill," Jessica demanded, setting down 2 cups of coffee and fixing Sarah with a penetrating stare. "You've been weird for days. And don't say you're fine. I've known you for 6 years. What's going on?" Sarah had been holding it in, not sure how to explain something so surreal, but looking at Jessica's concerned face, she broke. The whole story poured out. The pharmacy encounter, David's visit, the will, the house, everything. Jessica's mouth fell open further with each revelation. When Sarah finished, her friend sat in stunned silence for a full minute. That's insane," Jessica finally said. "That's like something from a movie. Things like that don't happen in real life." "I know," Sarah said, pulling out her phone to show Jessica the property listing she'd found online. "But it's real. This is the house." Jessica scrolled through the images on the real estate site. The craftsman exterior, the hardwood floors, the updated kitchen, the cozy bedrooms, the garden with mature trees and flowering bushes. "Sarah, this is gorgeous. And it's worth over $500,000? "According to the attorney, yes. And you're just getting it, free and clear, no mortgage." "Yes." Jessica set down the phone and grabbed Sarah's hands. "Sarah, do you understand how life-changing this is? You've been struggling to save for a down payment for years. You've been living in that tiny apartment with the leaking faucet and the noisy neighbors. This is a miracle." "It feels wrong," Sarah admitted, voicing the guilt that had been gnawing at her. "I didn't do anything special. I just paid for an old woman's medicine. This feels like too much." "No," Jessica said firmly. "It's not too much. You know why? Because you're the kind of person who would pay for a stranger's medicine without thinking twice. You're the kind of person who stays late every shift to comfort scared kids. You're the kind of person who volunteers at the free clinic on your days off. You deserve something good happening to you." Sarah felt fresh tears welling up. "I'm scared, Jess. What if I can't handle it? What if I mess it up somehow?" "You won't," Jessica assured her. "But you need to go see it. You need to actually visit this house before you spiral too much. When's your next day off?" "Friday." "Then go Friday. Walk through it. Feel it out. And text me immediately after with every detail. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens when Sarah visits the house." Friday arrived wrapped in typical Pacific Northwest weather, overcast skies with intermittent drizzle. Sarah drove through the Pearl District slowly, her heart pounding as she got closer to the address. The neighborhood had transformed over the years from industrial warehouses to trendy boutiques, art galleries, and beautifully restored homes. It was one of Portland's most desirable areas. 1247. Northrop Street sat on a quiet, tree-lined block. As Sarah pulled up to the curb and killed the engine, she simply sat for a moment, staring at the house that was somehow now hers. It was even more beautiful in person than in the photographs. The craftsman-style architecture featured deep eaves, exposed rafters, and a covered front porch with tapered columns. The blue-grey siding was well-maintained, the white trim crisp and clean. The front yard had a small garden with perennials that still showed some late-season blooms despite the November chill. Sarah got out of her car slowly, almost reverently, and walked up the front path. Her hands shook as she pulled the key from her pocket and inserted it into the lock. It turned smoothly, and the door opened with a soft creak. The moment she stepped inside, something shifted in her chest. The interior smelled faintly of lavender and old books, comforting, homey smells. The entryway opened into a living room with original hardwood floors that glowed even in the dim light filtering through the windows. The walls were painted a soft cream color, and built-in bookshelves flanked a brick fireplace. Sarah walked through the space slowly, touching the walls, the door frames, feeling the history soaked into every surface. The kitchen had been updated but kept its vintage charm: white cabinets, butcher block countertops, and a beautiful old farmhouse sink. There was even a small breakfast nook with windows overlooking the back garden. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms offered possibilities Sarah had never dared to imagine. One could be her bedroom, one an office, one a guest room for when her sister visited. The bathroom had been renovated with obvious care: subway tile, a clawfoot tub, and a window with frosted glass, but it was the back garden that truly captured her heart. She stepped out onto a small deck and gazed at the space Margaret and Harold had clearly loved. Raised garden beds, currently dormant for winter, promised spring vegetables. Mature trees provided shade and privacy. A small stone path wound through the space, leading to a wooden bench beneath a Japanese maple tree. Sarah sat on that bench and let herself cry. Deep, gasping sobs of relief. gratitude, grief, and overwhelming emotion. She cried for Margaret, who she'd never truly know. She cried for Harold, whose craftsmanship was evident in every carefully maintained corner of the property. She cried for herself, for all the years of struggling and saving, and wondering if she'd ever have security and stability. If you're crying too, you're not alone. Drop A in the comments. When the tears finally subsided, Sarah pulled out her phone and called David. He answered on the second ring. "Sarah?" His voice was cautious, hopeful. "I'm at the house," she said, her voice still thick with emotion. "David, it's beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." She could hear the relief in his voice. "I'm glad. I was hoping you'd feel that way. Gran loved that house so much." "I can tell," Sarah said, looking around at the garden. "You can feel the love in every corner. She and your grandfather built something really special here." "They did," David agreed. "And now it's yours. What are you thinking? Will you keep it?" Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the rightness of the decision settling into her bones. "Yes, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to make it my home, and I'm going to honor Margaret's memory by filling it with the same kind of love and kindness she showed me." "That's—" David's voice broke slightly. "That's exactly what she would have wanted to hear. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for being the person you are." After they hung up, Sarah spent another hour in the house, exploring every corner, imagining her furniture in the rooms, her books on the shelves, her life unfolding within these walls. She took pictures to send to Jessica, to her sister, to her parents. As the afternoon light began to fade, Sarah locked the front door carefully and stood on the porch for a long moment, looking at her new home. Her home. The words still felt surreal. The drive back to her apartment felt different. The city looked different. Everything was tinged with possibility and hope. Over the next few weeks, Sarah began the process of transitioning into her new life. She gave notice at her apartment, arranged for movers, and started the emotional task of packing up her modest belongings. Every box she packed felt like closing one chapter and opening another. Mr. Bennett finalized all the legal paperwork, and the deed was officially transferred to her name. Sarah held the official document in her hands and marveled at seeing her name listed as the property owner of 1247 Northrop Street. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see how Sarah's new life unfolds. This story is far from over. Jessica helped her paint one of the bedrooms, and they spent an entire Saturday laughing and covered in paint splatters, imagining all the possibilities of the new space. Sarah's sister flew down from Seattle for a weekend to help with the move, marveling at the house and crying over the story of how Sarah had come to own it. "You've always been the kindest person I know," her sister said, hugging her tightly in the kitchen. "If anyone deserves something wonderful like this, it's you." But not everything was easy. Sarah struggled with guilt, lying awake at night wondering if she'd somehow taken advantage of an elderly woman's gratitude. She researched Margaret's history obsessively, trying to understand the woman who had changed her life so dramatically. She discovered that Margaret had taught at Ainsworth Elementary School for nearly 4 decades. Sarah tracked down former students through social media, now middle-aged adults who remembered Mrs. Davis with tremendous fondness. One woman wrote, "Mrs. Davis changed my life. I came from a broken home, and she was the one adult who believed in me. She stayed after school to help me with reading for an entire year. I'm a teacher now because of her." The stories poured in, dozens of them, painting a picture of a woman who had dedicated her entire life to helping others, to showing kindness to children who needed it most. It helped Sarah understand. Margaret hadn't seen their pharmacy encounter as a one-time transaction. She'd seen it as a kindred spirit, someone who operated from the same place of compassion that had defined her own life. One evening, while unpacking boxes in her new living room, Sarah found herself thinking about the ripple effect of kindness. Margaret had spent decades teaching children, affecting countless lives. One of those children grew up to become a nurse who helped sick kids, and that nurse had shown kindness to Margaret, who had then passed on her legacy in a way that would allow that nurse to continue helping others from a position of greater security and stability. It wasn't a transaction. It was a continuation of a cycle of compassion that Margaret had been participating in her entire life. What do you think about the cycle of kindness? Comment your thoughts below. Sarah's move-in day arrived in mid-December, just as Portland's winter settled in fully. Friends from the hospital helped her move furniture and boxes, all of them amazed by the house and the incredible story behind it. They ordered pizza and sat in her new living room, the fireplace crackling warmly and toasted to new beginnings. That night, after everyone had left, Sarah sat alone in her new home for the first time. Milo explored the space curiously, sniffing every corner and eventually settling in a patch of moonlight on the living room floor. Sarah opened a bottle of wine she'd been saving for a special occasion and poured herself a glass. She walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, feeling the weight of the gift she'd been given and the responsibility that came with it. In the master bedroom, she hung the 2 letters from Margaret in simple frames on the wall where she could see them every day. They would serve as reminders of kindness given and received, of lives intersecting in meaningful ways, of the importance of paying attention to the small moments that could change everything. As she climbed into bed in her new bedroom, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a deep, profound sense of peace and security. She had a home, a real home, and with it came the opportunity to live differently, to help more people, to make a bigger difference in the world. Margaret's gift wasn't just a house, it was freedom. It was possibility. It was a foundation upon which Sarah could build a life of greater purpose and generosity. And as she drifted off to sleep, Sarah made a silent promise to the memory of Margaret Davis. She would honor this gift by being the best version of herself, by continuing to show kindness whenever possible, and by passing on the blessing she'd received to others who needed it. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Chapter 3. The Legacy Lives On. 3 months into living at 1247 Northrop Street, Sarah's life had transformed in ways she never could have anticipated. The house had become more than just a place to live. It had become a catalyst for change, both for herself and, unexpectedly, for her entire community. It started small. In January, during a particularly brutal cold snap that swept through Portland, Sarah noticed a homeless man sheltering under the awning of the closed coffee shop on her corner. She'd walked past homeless individuals countless times in her years in the city, gave money when she could, volunteered at shelters occasionally. But something shifted in her now. Margaret's gift had given her security she'd never known, and with that security came a new capacity for generosity. She brought the man hot coffee and a breakfast sandwich from the cafe once it opened. His name was Robert, and he was a veteran who'd fallen on hard times after a series of medical emergencies wiped out his savings. They talked for 20 minutes, and Sarah learned he'd been a medic in the army, not so different from her work as a nurse. If you're still with us, please subscribe. Sarah's journey of paying it forward is truly inspiring. That conversation sparked an idea. Sarah had a basement in her new house, a full, finished basement that she'd been using for storage. What if she could do more with it? She called David, who had become a friend in the months since Margaret's passing. They met for coffee and Sarah explained her idea. "I want to use my basement as a temporary shelter," she said. "Nothing permanent or formal. I know there are regulations and concerns, but during the coldest nights when shelters are full, what if I could offer a warm, safe place for someone to sleep, just until they can get back on their feet or find more permanent housing?" David listened carefully, his engineer's mind already working through the